So we'll dive into the conversation soon.
Sure.
Let me welcome all our viewers and people who've logged in. Welcome, a good evening to all of them. And let me welcome all of you to this evening of the BW Wellbeing Dialogue. Today we'll be talking to Acharya Prashant, who's an author, who's a Vedanta philosopher, and who's now written a book on karma. And the book is titled Karma, and provocatively it says that everything that exists on karma till now is not what karma is. I've read the book. It's an interesting take. This is my second book on karma I've read. I read another book by a very accomplished individual about 30 days back. Clearly we all are worried about our karma. Stephen Covey said, you should do the right thing for the right reason in the right manner. Intent matters. So let me briefly introduce Shri Acharya Praveen. He lived a material life. He went to, his father was a civil servant. He grew up in UP. And he then went to an IIT, he went to an IIM. He became a civil servant, but he's chosen a path to help others reach their maximum potential. So let me welcome Acharya Prashant ji to this conversation. And I'll call him Acharya Prashant ji, though he's younger to me, but respecting what he does, I'll call him, I like my karma to be right. First of all, let me start by asking you, Acharya ji, how have been the last 17, 18 months for you both personally and professionally, given the fact that we were living a pandemic life? The world truly became a VUCA world. I mean, VUCA was a concept, but the last 17, 18 months have been traumatic for almost everyone. So how were the last 17, 18 months for you both personally and professionally?
First of all, thank you, sir, for the kind introduction. Last 17, 18 months have brought in a further sense of urgency. Looking at the situation around us, in the city, then in the country, then throughout the world. We really saw that we do not really have too much time as a people for complacency to drive in the point further. Almost half the organization here, the members of the foundation, got infected, including me. And then there were the family members falling sick and all the usual things happening. And all of that brought in, as I said, a deeper sense of urgency towards the work that we are doing. The way mankind is living, the way we go about our daily business and our broader lives, that's taking us in the direction of various kinds of sicknesses, not merely physical. And the pandemic is just one of them. So that's what happened. It made us commit ourselves, introspect and commit ourselves redoubly to our cause.
Absolutely. And Acharya Prashant, I would say it's a rebirth for a lot of us. It's a rebirth. It's a second life. It's a chance to be our best version, to be able to contribute. Now, let me ask you, in the last 18 months, in your view, what has changed and what has remained the same? I know we wish a lot of it has changed earlier. The consciousness towards the environment, towards sustainability, the compassion towards human beings should have increased before that. But in my view, at least the consciousness has increased. But in your view, what has changed and what has remained the same?
People have become more conscious towards this particular disease, this particular pandemic, but has the consciousness broadened itself, become more pervasive to include everything that we might not be doing justice to, everything that might be standing as a potential threat to us, that I doubt. You see, just a few days back, probably just 2 days, the United Nations released its report on climate change. It's one of the most comprehensive reports till date, and it says that the clock is ticking really loudly for us as a people. All the previous doomsday projections stand nullified, and the recent projections are very, very dire. So I do not think that even the pandemic has succeeded in bringing about a fundamental change in the quality of our thought, our being, our actions. And that's a matter of grave concern.
Again, your book is provocatively titled Karma, why everything you know about it is wrong. And why do you believe that our notions of karma are not right, or they need to be expanded? And again, you talk of Vedas. Vedas are possibly the richest, deepest, and most real text that we have, and I have some exposure to that. Tell me, why did you title your book Karma? Why everything you know about it is wrong?
Precisely because we keep looking at karma. Precisely because the word, the notion that has gained importance and popularity is karma, whereas the real one of interest, of importance, is the karta, the doer. We focus so much on the doing that the doer behind the doing remains comfortably shielded. So the more we'll talk about karma, the more we will defend the state of the doer. And if we defend the state of the doer, it's unlikely that the state of the doing will be fundamentally changed. So when I say that all or most of what we know about karma is wrong, it is precisely because the center of our thought is the action rather than the actor. And it's a false center then. That center has to change. We need to focus more on where the action is coming from, rather than how the action looks and whether the action conforms to certain standards or benchmarks or stereotypes. All that can wait. The thing of prime importance is the one doing the thing, and that hardly receives any attention.
Absolutely. And I was thinking, I read another book, and the focus is your book, so I won't take the name of the other book. I asked myself, what I do is right. Is it the right intent? Am I doing it for the right reason? But one of the things that came to my mind, and I thought I'll ask you, I'm a Hindu. I believe in prarabdha. I believe that life is preordained, right?
Please,
your life and my life are preordained.
Preordained. Okay.
I believe in prarabdha, that,
Okay.
what will happen to me is preordained. So why should I worry about karma? Because my life is preordained.
No, you see,
I understand the distinction, but I'm asking it for our viewers.
Yes, sure. So it's a good question, and I thank you for this. You see, my destiny is preordained. But the route I take towards that destiny, that is not at all preordained. So, niyati, destiny, the place I have to reach because that's the only real place, that's the only truthful place. That cannot change. That is Satya, that is Atma. But do I, in my own eyes, in my own consideration, exist as the pure self, the truth? No, I exist as the limited ego. And that ego has the unfortunate privilege of choice. So the ego decides the way it takes, the ego decides the time it takes, ego decides the company it takes, and so all of that is in the ego's province, and there is no power in the universe that's going to veto the right of the ego to to keep troubling itself, to keep taking very, very long and unnecessary routes towards the truth, towards its liberation. So, if we think that prarabdha means that what I'm going to do the next moment is pre-scripted or preordained, no, that's really not what is going to happen, and that is not what the scriptures, particularly Vedanta, says. No, that's not there. What they definitely say is that the destiny of the ego, aham, is to get dissolved or liberated. That is preordained. That is one thing that cannot be challenged or avoided. But everything else is in the province of what you could loosely call as free will, though it is not really free, but in the eyes of the doer, it appears to be free. So everything else is in our hands. And that's the reason why discretion or vivek should be exercised. That is the reason why man lives by his dharma. Otherwise, there is no need for dharma if everything is just totally preordained, if we are just puppets doing what the puppeteer wants us to do every moment, then there is no need for any dharma, and there is no need for thought, there is no need for understanding, there is no need for, as we said, vivek or discrimination. But all these things are needed because we have that very magnificent, though unfortunate, privilege of choice.
When I read the book, there's optimism in it, but there is some pessimism in the titles of some of the chapters. Now, when you see people around you, you see your disciples, you see the larger world, as human beings, are we more conscious of our karma than we ever were?
You mean in the context of the pandemic?
Yes. Today, in the last 18 months, I think we realized the frailty of human life. We realized the fact that we are interconnected. We realized the fact less is more. We realized the fact that never say never. We realized that these tall egos don't mean much. They can go away in a matter of seconds. So, are we more conscious of our karma as individuals today, as society today?
You see, what happens is that if one is not coming from the right center, then anything that happens to him or her is prone to be interpreted in a false kind of way. For example, even if I do have a realization that the human birth is quite ephemeral and anything can happen anytime, the third wave might strike and such things, I might translate it to mean that I should increase my consumption. I should go on a consumption spree because all that I have left to consume is a few days. So why not make the most of them?
Totally. And you have a chapter in the book called How to Decide How Much to Consume. You know, you have a
Yeah.
chapter in the book. But
Yes.
we'll come to that in a while. Go on, sir.
Yes. You see, consumption is a very important word when it comes to the doer and his doing. Because the doer that we take ourselves to be proceeds from his sense of incompleteness. And so all doing is actually aimed merely at consumption of some kind, whether implicit or explicit, whether in the name of love or hatred, whether in the name of something material or something spiritual. Essentially, the ego tries to accumulate, to add something to itself, because it has a strong sense of its hollowness, its incompleteness. And this same consumption has brought us to a point where we have totally vandalized this planet, and we have entered the jungles, and we are in contact now with one dangerous virus after the other. And I talked of the UN report that was mentioning how the clock is ticking even faster on us. So, unless we have this fundamental realization of where we are coming from, I do not see much hope for us. You said that in some way all of us have taken a second birth. I really wish that we do take a second birth in the psychological sense. We desperately require to die to the way we have been so far, to our pasts. And the book is a small attempt in that direction.
Thank you so much. Now, the book has 40 chapters. Which is your favorite chapter and why?
I reckon the very last one, remember the deed, remember the deed. It is based on one of my favorite verses from Vedanta. It repeatedly says, Krita Smaram, Krita Smaram. What it is saying is, what it's rather imploring us to see is whether our actions today are really qualitatively different from what they have been in the past for us. In fact, are our actions today really different from how mankind has been acting since the start of time? Remember the deed, remember the deed. And if we not really have been changing, how do we expect the fruits of our results to change? In an apparent sense, yes, we learn, we try to improve, we do so many things. But what if, in the actual sense, all our actions are driven by our basic tendencies, like fear, like greed, like jealousy, like the tendency to be deluded, like anger. What if all of our actions are basically coming only from there? Yes, we might be very good at polishing our actions, but you see, just because something is polished, it doesn't become valuable. It can become glittery, but glitter is not necessarily value. So I really love that one.
Again, I want to ask you for more your own personal journey. How did you conquer, let's say, negative aspect And I was going to ask you about the chapters, and you have many chapters that are very thought-provoking. One of them is sometimes the right action appears like inaction. That's one chapter. I want you to expand on this. When I was reading this chapter and I was thinking about that title, and I thought of some practical situations in life, and it made me think about something. So tell me, why do you say that sometimes the right action appears like inaction?
You see, when we do not appreciate the point our action is coming from, then there are two kinds of problems. One is we do not act consciously and powerfully when action is really needed. We find ourselves handicapped, almost paralyzed. We do not know where the energy and the clarity and the fearlessness must come from to act rightly. That is one problem. I suppose a bigger problem is that we start acting needlessly when there is no need to act. And both these problems go together hand in hand. Of these, the second one is probably more lethal today. If we look at the state of mankind today, what is happening is that probably more than 80-90% of the things that we are doing are really not needed to be done. We are acting out of needless desperation and greed. So that chapter says that, as you quoted, that sometimes the right action looks like inaction. If you are acting rightly, you might look like as the one not acting in a group of people who are acting very furiously and feverishly. But a person energetically throwing about his limbs in this direction and that direction, running from pillar to post, and burning a lot of fuel of his life is no guarantee of any meaningful action taking place at all. We need to slow down. We need to be extremely sure that the things that we are doing really need to be done. And when we first of all cut out from our life that which is needless, then parallelly we will also get the courage and the energy to energetically do what deserves and needs to be done.
Absolutely, I agree. And how does one discern that? Of course, it comes, you can have a guru, you can have a teacher, you can have a master. It comes from past experience. It comes from the right bhakti, if I may say. It comes from the environment. But is there a playbook to figuring out how do you take the right action? I mean, that's where wisdom comes. That's where the power of, the power of making the right choice. But as you say in the books, sometimes it can be, seen as action.
Yes. You see, there are two things, and both of these are concurrently important. They act in combination with each other. They complement each other. One is a keen and honest observation of life. One has to be very honest towards oneself, because often we are masters in self-delusion. We do not admit, first of all, to ourselves what our real intentions and fears and desires are. So that is something that we need to work upon. And secondly, we need the good company, rather the great company of the scriptures. So the scriptures will tell us something, and then we have to see whether it is corroborated by our life. And when something arises in our life, if we find an echo in the scriptures, then that reaffirms our belief in our finding. And so if these two act in tandem, then it becomes far easier to know oneself, which essentially means knowing the ego. I like to call these as the two wings of a bird. When they work together, then there is a certain ascension in life.
Acharya Prashant, I'm really happy that I'm talking to you. And I have a deep interest in spirituality. I may run businesses and I'm still human, which means I have some of the, behaviors that human beings exhibit. But I'm very conscious that I try and do the right thing for the right reason in the right manner. But let me dive into the book again. Yes. You have a chapter on what is the right decision. How does one get to the right decision? You talked about the scriptures, you talk about a guru. Then you also talk about when to think and when to act. Again, that making that discernment, Acharya Prashant, sometimes is not easy. Right? So is there take us through the chapter, when to think and when to act. I found that chapter again very simple yet deep.
Thank you, sir. You see, thinking is in itself action. So it's not as if thought leads to action. That's a workable but not deep enough way of looking at how our inner machine operates. Thought I would prefer to call as subtle action, and that which we call as action, which is more manifest, more physical, that can be called as gross action. Nevertheless, both thought and action are in themselves actions, and therefore there is a common actor behind them. That actor needs to be pure. If that actor is all right.
Intent, is the actor and intent are the same?
See, the actor is recognized by his intent. There is no other way to know the actor. In fact, or I could say that looking at the intent of the actor is the best way to unmask the actor. Otherwise, the actor is adept at wearing lots of misleading names. If you just go and ask him directly, please tell me, sir, why are you doing this particular thing? The actor will say, well, for charity, well, for the good of others. I have no self-interest here. So the actor will say all these things. In some situations, one has to investigate, one has to interrogate, and one has to, most importantly, observe what the actor is really desiring out of the action. And all that takes us closer to the real name, real face of the actor. So when the actor is right, then thought and action are not in conflict with each other. When the actor is not right, then there is an inner conflict in thoughts, and there is an outer confusion in action as well. So it's not possible that one says I have clarity in thoughts, but when it comes to acting in the world, then I just goof up. That's not going to happen. It's impossible, though we often hear people saying that. It's an inaccurate description of what might really be happening. So what one needs is inner clarity, and then both kinds of actions, the thought action and the physical action, fall in line.
Beautiful. Now let me dive into some other chapters in the book.
Sure.
1 hour is not enough to dissect your whole book and discuss your book and to bring out the best. And I'm sure we'll do another conversation. I've enjoyed the conversation. You talk about, you said doership is bondage. I read the chapter and I understood what you were saying. But for the benefit of our viewers and readers, tell them, why do you believe doership is a bondage?
Yes. Has Kamish, the voice is gone. Back.
Acharya.
So the voice was not there for the last 1 minute, so you'll please.
Acharya Prashantji, basically I said, your chapter says that doership is bondage. Expand on that for our viewers.
Sure. Thank you. You see,
can I tell you a personal reason why I asked this?
Please.
Because I believe a lot in execution. Yes. I keep saying sometimes when I'm in private that I'm a doer. I do things.
Yes.
And I really believe that I dedicate it to God. I believe that I try a lot of things, but some things happen, not all. So clearly there is a higher power, there is a universe, whatever, God. So clearly, so when you said doing is bondage, doership is bondage, it got me thinking.
Yeah, that's because the doer himself is often a product of bondage. The doer, to be more direct and accurate, is bondage personified. Often that's the case. And when that's the case, then everything that comes out of the doer only serves to reinforce the bondage. Who is the doer? That's the question we need to go into. If the doer is a product of biological and social conditioning, then the doer is just an agent of the forces that seek to keep the doer himself in fetters. And now the doer might be acting vigorously, but that's only to carry out the commands of its masters. When we are born, we are already carrying a lot of tendencies within us that clutch us, that make us do their bidding, that make us feel as if our very identity is linked to them, those tendencies. And then as we progress through life, move through life, then there is a lot of social input by way of influences, by way of education and such things. And there, again, there is a lot of identification. We become what we absorb, though that's not what we truly are. And when we become what we absorb, then most of what we do goes against our own real interests. It's almost as if the prisoner has been asked to build his own cell, and the prisoner has been told that he is the mason. Right? Now a false identity has been laid upon a false identity. The prisoner is happily raising the walls of his own confinement. And he says, I'm working so very hard from 9 to 9 every day. What's more, the prisoner is being paid as well. So the prisoner thinks it's a fair deal, and the prisoner is busy decorating his cell, the small place he would be kept limited to. And so that's what doership is, bondage. This kind of analogy probably both scares and clarifies. We all work really very hard, but the question is, who is the one making us work so hard? And even if we are receiving some payment, some rewards, some fruits of our action, are the fruits going to supersede the ill effects of the action, irrespective of how much that prisoner is paid for his labor? He's actually made a very bad deal. He'll stay in the same enclosure he himself is raising.
And there's a lot of response from people you know and people you don't know. I'm getting texts, very good response, and I'm enjoying. And I'm grateful to you for your time and for you writing the book.
I'm grateful.
Absolutely my pleasure. And I say it from the deepest corner of my heart. And you have a chapter on not expecting when you work. How is it that possible? Is it possible to work without expecting any results in today's world? Is that possible? Do your best and leave to God. We've heard this, but we all start, I'm building a company. I have a monthly target. I have children. I have a wife. I have 300 colleagues. I live in a society. I look at the valuations of other entrepreneurs. So I do focus on results. I'm doing this conversation with you. I'm looking how many attendees, how many questions, what is the response eventually of the conversation you do, what traffic. But so how is it possible not to expect results?
You see, when I'm responding to you, I'm being very honest with this one, especially this one, because I have really no space to think about the online audiences, and that's with the maximum respect, with more than the due respect to all who are around me. I'm completely dedicated right now to this conversation. There we are, the two.
But in the moment, you're mindful. You're 100% in it.
Yes, because what we are doing here right now is intrinsically nice, good, joyful, beautiful. And therefore, there is hardly any space left to think of the result. And that's exactly what is meant when we talk of action without desire, or action without a great consideration towards its fruit. Why do we first of all focus so much on the result? Because the result brings a certain happiness to us, right? If the result happens to be in a particular way, then it is supposed to bring a certain fulfillment, a certain happiness. And therefore, we focus so much on the result. But please consider a situation in which a similar fulfillment or an even higher fulfillment comes from the very action rather than the fruit of the action. What if I do not have to wait for the to feel happy? What if the doing itself gives me an equal measure of happiness? That's what is Nishkam Karma. Nishkam Karma says the result is anyway, you see, unpredictable and not so much in your hands. So why do you want to mortgage your happiness to something so intrinsically unpredictable? Why don't you first of all pick up the right work and be immersed so deeply that you have no time to think of the results. And often when you have no time to think of the results take care of themselves.
Beautiful, beautiful. Beautiful. When you're fully giving it your best, there's a good chance what you desire also happens in that process.
Yes.
We're getting.
In fact, if I may take the liberty to clarify on this, you see, when you are totally immersed in the work for the sake of the work, then the desire becomes very sharp and focused. Now the desire is with respect to the work itself, not what the work would bring to you at a later point in the future. These two are very different things. Desire that expands into the future is one thing, and desire that is limited to this very moment, the work that I'm doing right now, is a totally different quality. And then it's not as if you are focused on the work, then your desire about its result to be fulfilled. No, it's actually very, very different. You're left with no desire about the result. Even defeat becomes very similar to victory because you have already given the thing everything that you had. It becomes like a love affair. You become helpless. You have to give it everything that you have. And after that, you hardly even have the energy or inclination to worry about the result or even celebrate the result. So there is no grand celebration when the result arrives. You are already a winner because you gave it everything that you had. And why could you give it everything that you had? Because you chose, first of all, the right work to do. You cannot give every random thing all your life, all your energy. It's impossible. And if you attempt that, you would burn out, or you would be deceiving yourself. To be able to really, lovingly, harmoniously give yourself completely to the work, first of all, the work has to be right.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love what I do. I enjoy reading books. I am deeply into spirituality, though I run an organization. I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm enjoying my conversation. And I have a guru. I mean, he's my friend. When I passed out of a business school called MDI 25 years back, and 26, more like 26. And since then he's 82. I'm 49, and he's my friend, and he was the one who introduced me to Vedas. And one of the things he keeps saying about Vedas is Vedas are contextual, Anurag. Do you agree that karma is also contextual?
No, obviously, everything is contextual, except for the truth. Everything is contextual. What is meant by something being contextual? It is related to something else. It is related to the background, it is related to the conditions. So obviously, the truth alone is niralam or independent or irrespective of anything else, because there is nothing except the truth. Therefore, the truth can have no context to itself. The truth is its own context. Be it the world, be it anything in the world, or be it the one, the person, the ego that perceives the world, everything is obviously contextual. So when we say Vedas are contextual, what we really mean there is that the Vedas are telling us, especially Vedanta is telling us that we are a product of our contexts. That there is nothing absolute or free about the ego. We are contextual. In other words, we are conditioned. And if we see that we are conditioned, then there arises a sharp desire towards liberation.
Beautiful. Now, let me move into some other chapters in the book.
Sure.
The book has 40 chapters for our viewers and readers. I got a digital copy, so I've read a digital copy. Otherwise, I would have waived it, but I'm sure I'll get a physical copy. One of the chapters is on Sattvika and Tamasic action, Sattvic and Tamasic action. How do you distinguish? And you keep saying in the book, there is a fine line between sattvic and tamasic action. So explain that, build on that.
Thank you for the question. You see, tamasic action is when you are conditioned, when you are in bondage, yet you feel untroubled by the situation. You say, I'm confident I'm doing the right thing. I'm at the right place. I know, I understand. I'm just all right. That is tamsikta. Like a fellow who cares not at all about the world because he is drunk. And then there is the fellow who cares not at all about the world because he realizes the intrinsic nature of the world. This is sattvikta. I said there is a fine line between the two because there is a great apparent commonality, similarity. What is that? Both these fellows are confident of their situation and do not worry too much about the world. But one is confident because one is totally deluded, and the other is confident because he is liberated. Tamsikta has been taken as the lowest of the three gunas in Prakriti, precisely because it keeps one comfortable. When one is rajasic, then one is restless. But when one is tamasic, one is at rest. A very dangerous kind of rest.
Inaction.
Yes,
Suffering.
you could. Yes, no, the fellow becomes insensitive towards his suffering. You could visualize a drunkard sleeping on the railway tracks in all bliss. Totally unmindful of the world, totally unmindful of his location, his situation, totally unmindful of the tragedy that very soon is going to fall upon him. That's tamsikta. So the fellow is not only at the wrong place, he feels no need to change his place. And unfortunately, most people we see around us are tamasic in nature. We just feel so comfortable in our skin. In fact, we resist any attempts by life to show us the mirror. We want to tell ourselves we are okay, and that we often call as positivity. We want to tell ourselves things are, if not excellent, then at least acceptable with us. And that's a great problem. That's like somebody willfully hiding his disease. Somebody not being honest enough even to carry out a diagnosis. So that's tamsikta. Sattvikta is when you really are on the right track, when you really understand the ways of life, when you really understand the one within who is a master at self-delusion, and therefore now you are no more in bondage, you are actually in the right place. So that sattvikta, that has been taken as the highest point possible to the mind, and after that the only thing left is to go beyond even sattvikta, and that is the gunatit state, and that is pure self, the truth. That's how Vedanta puts it.
Yeah, and again, I have some comprehension of what you're saying. In comprehension is easy, application sometimes is tough. But let me ask you, you also talk about past life karma. Pishle janam ke karam. You have a chapter dedicated to that. Now, we don't know what our past life karma is. We don't know. right? How do we make sure that we are doing the right karma in this moment? And that's what matters. But again, sometimes even after people do the right thing, they don't get the right results. So how do you stay the course?
These are these are two questions in one. I'll take them one by one. First of all, Vedanta does not talk of a personal past life. Huh? The person that you are or I am, we have no past or future lives. Rebirth or reincarnation happens at a general, at a macro level, not at a personal level. I, as Prashant, am not going to take birth again. However, the tendency within me that says I am Prashant would remain till the time existence is. Existence itself is the I tendency. So we could say it's the I tendency that exists and keeps repeating its existence in the form of a Prashant, a Nishant, and Anurag, and then something and something and something and something. So that's about past lives. The form is new every time. If the form expects that it's immortal by way of reincarnation, then it's not proper. That's one thing. And the second thing you said in continuation with this was that is it due to past karma that often, in spite of doing the right thing, we do not get the right results, right? Probably that's the link between the two parts of your question. That is it due to past life karma that I suffer in this birth? No, not really. No. You see, the past has given us this body, right? And the body for sure has a lot of garbage of the past accumulated in it. If one wants to put it in a very ruthlessly cynical way, one could even say that it's only the garbage of the past that gets born with every child. Though I understand that's a harsh way of putting it, but not an inaccurate way. So that garbage is born, obviously, and we all have that in us. And the purpose of life, therefore, is to act in a way that reduces the garbage, that cleans up. We often do not realize that what we are born with is garbage. Though, if we clean that garbage up, then what we'll be left with is something tremendous, something very precious, something immortal indeed. But that's a far cry. Mostly what happens is that we identify with the garbage and start thinking of the garbage itself as the truth, the real thing. And then obviously we are going to suffer. The desire towards action will itself be born from the latent tendencies coming from the past. And then even if that desire does get fulfilled, what we'll get is suffering. And if that desire does not get fulfilled, we'll get disappointment. And these are the two ends of the swing called life. Desire fulfilled, what we get is frustration. Desire unfulfilled.
It's not equanimous. We are not equanimous. We are not samantar. We are not
equanimous. We cannot be equanimous given the way we take ourselves to be. We take ourselves as highly incomplete. You see, if I am incomplete, let's say I feel hungry, right? And there is a book kept here and there is food kept here, then it is impossible for me to be equanimous towards both. Samta, equanimity, will definitely elude me because my identity right now is linked to my mouth and to my stomach. I cannot look at these two in a neutral way, in an unbiased way. I'll pounce upon the food. So that depends on my situation. Equanimity is possible only to one who is operating from a place of fulfillment. If I'm operating from a place of fulfillment, I can look at everything without coveting anything, without being fundamentally desirous of anything. Well, at a superficial level, I can play the game of desire. At a superficial level, I can do what is needed at this moment for the sake of others. But for myself, I will not have any burning desire because I'm already all right. But that is a very rare and difficult, unfortunately, point to come to. Most of us keep operating from very needless points of dissatisfaction, and therefore we keep throwing ourselves at one thing or the other. We keep falling in random directions, such things.
There are lots. I'm grateful to you and your team for setting this up. I really feel I can talk to you for 2 hours. So if things permit, I'll come and meet you and do a conversation, and I'll write a mail.
You're most welcome.
I've enjoyed talking to you. But there are questions from the audience, and audience is a very important part of this interaction. So let me take it from them. Let me not just be. So Harsh Raj is asking, I want to ask a question. Doer or ego, are the doer and the ego the same? How do we know when we are doing the right action?
Yes, the ego is the doer. The ego is the doer. The ego always is the doer. It's just that we need to elevate the ego to the highest point possible. The highest point of the ego is when the ego becomes a servant to the truth. When the ego becomes a servant to the truth, then we can call it as a non-doing ego. Otherwise, factually, the doer is always the ego. So if someone likes to claim that what I'm doing right now is actually from a point of non-doing, that I'm a non-doer really, it's not really accurate. Irrespective of the point one reaches in his or her spiritual life, the doer is always the ego. Just try to ensure that it's a dedicated ego, that it's a surrendered ego, that it's an ego that has committed itself to the truth.
Thank you so much. I think if we can get there, that's also a good position to be. Yes. And your team wanted me to have a conversation with you. I've had, with your permission, my young colleague, and I'm very fond of him, and I encourage him. His name is Kavi Bhandari. He's the lead on our BW well-being. He, in spite of seeing the mail exchanges with your team, he wants me to permit him to ask you a question, if you permit.
Sure.
Kavi, you can come on the camera and ask Shri Acharya Prashant Ji the question.
Thank you, sir. So actually, I'm not being able to switch on my video.
No problem. Go ahead, ask your question.
Shri Acharya Prashant Ji, as a child, I always had this question, and this question was, where does the universe end? So I used to always think that if there's an end, there has to be something beyond that. So as I didn't understand it. As I grew up, once my mother told me, she told me that you're thinking in terms of limited consciousness. If you think in terms of 360-degree consciousness, then you'll understand that we are way beyond the dimensions of time and space. Then I saw a movie called Interstellar. I read a book also. So I got to know that we as souls are living in different places on different planes. I'm not talking about astral planes or anything.
So what's your question, Kavi?
Sir, my question is that when we are living in these separate planes, the karma that we do, this collective karma, how do we calculate it? How do we comprehend it so that we can get out of this birth and death cycle and merge with the supreme consciousness or the golden light?
See, it's great that you want to reach those great heights and you're talking of supreme consciousness and these things. But what's really more practically important in this moment is to see where we are acting in very, very limited ways. Let the supreme wait, keep the supreme aside. First of all, let's talk about the present, the imminent. What are we doing right now? The supreme means the highest, the ultimate. Are we committed to the highest in the action that we are doing right now? Because that's the only thing that you can control. That's the only thing that decides your level of honesty. Otherwise, it makes not much sense to target the absolute while remaining willfully committed to small things in your daily life. How will you get the immense if you are so committed to the small, to the petty? So one has to weed out pettiness from his life, and there are layers of pettiness one after the other. As one keeps peeling off those layers, one keeps peeling off his inner ego. When a lot has been peeled away, then the question about the supreme itself disappears. When you have no questions to ask with respect to the supreme or the ultimate or the truth, that's when you realize that there is hardly anything to be realized and there is hardly anybody who can realize. You see, and that's linked to the universe thing you used to wonder about as a kid. You used to think what's beyond the universe. There is more universe beyond the universe. There is more universe beyond the universe. Where does the universe stop then? The universe stops where the thinker of the universe stops.
Your thinking expands the universe.
Yes,
it is what you believe in. Aham Brahmasmi.
Yes, your thinking is the universe. So therefore, there is no limit to the universe as such. The universe stops only at the point where the perceiver of the universe stops. Otherwise, you could say, well, I have come to the boundary of the universe, and then you wonder what's beyond the universe. And if you can wonder about something, it is still a part of the universe. Maybe it's another kind of universe, but nevertheless, it's still universe. Or you could start calling it a multiverse kind of model where you say, well, there is one universe, there is another universe, there is third universe. But even if you're talking of multiverses, you are the one talking of them. It's all within the domain of your thought. So as long as there is thought, there is one universe after the other. So one has to think of oneself. Think of yourself. Even the supreme or the absolute that you think of is just something within the universe. So stop caring or wondering so much about it. Think neither of the universe so much, nor should you concern yourself with the supreme so much. Look rather at your own life, your own daily actions. What do you work for? Who are the people you relate to? What do you like? What do you dislike? Where does your bread come from? Why have you chosen a particular kind of livelihood? These are the questions that matter much more than any of the traditional spiritual queries. Or you could say that these daily mundane questions are the real spiritual ones.
Thank you so much, Acharya Prashantji. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There are many questions. There are about 11 questions. There are about 37 comments. Out of them, 30 are salutation to you. But my last question, all the questions, the question from Atul Nautiyal, is it not possible to wipe out all ego? Suraj Kamath, sir, is there any power behind this creation? And can we experience the source and out? I'd say read the book. And then we'll do another conversation with Shri Acharya Prashantji. There's Ashutosh Pandey asking greetings. Raman Maharishi says you're not doer and everything is predetermined. Kindly throw some light on Ashutosh Pandeyji. I asked him a similar question As a Hindu, I believe everything is preordained, prarabdha. So he did answer that. We'll send you the recording. Akshita Sitaram says, Pranam Acharya, how to engage ourselves in duties related to humanity. Mayur Prasanna says, how to involve in continuous good work. Shalini Shukla asks, how not to identify with the conditioned self. Prakash Datta ji says, Pranam Acharya ji, who's Karta? Narendra Kumar is asking, good evening, sir. Is clarity and awareness the same thing? Are they interconnected? Akshay Tiwari is saying, even after knowing I'm slave of my actions and that is not actually benefiting me, I still keep falling into the trap. How do I get out of it? So my last, Prashant Tripathi is making a comment on using the resources of the earth. But let me ask you my last two questions and let you go. I know we're ahead of time. We're up above time. One is, how does one do away with one's addictions? Addiction can be work. Addiction can be food. Addiction can be anything. Excessive exercise can also be addiction, right? So how does one do away with one's addictions is my penultimate question, and I'll ask you my last question after that.
By taking on a higher addiction. You see, complete freedom, be it freedom from addictions or freedom from anything else, is the absolutely last thing. So, talking about the last thing, the very last thing, standing where we do currently is not really practical, won't work. Therefore, we have to realize that the way we are, we will relate to something. We will clutch at something. You could even say we will definitely be addicted to something. Then the choice does not lie in whether or not to be addicted. The choice lies in being discreet about the object you are addicted to. Find the highest you can relate to. The sages have talked of Ram Kumari. So, if you are indeed desirous of a high, why not try the high of Ram himself? And Ram here denotes the truth. So, the way we are, the way this human life is, we will need to be immersed in something. In that, we have no choice. The option to be born and not be attached, the option to be born and yet not be related is not available to us. Then just choose rightly. If you are in the grip of a certain addiction, you must realize that there is something that the ego wants from that substance, that object one is addicted to. Are we really getting what we want from that object? That hardly ever is the case. So then why not choose something higher? Spirituality obviously deals with liberation, but before it deals with liberation, it deals with conscious choice. It deals with choosing the highest possible. And if the highest possible appears very utopian right now, then at least we can choose something higher than the one we are with currently. Step by step, we can proceed, right? Higher, then higher, then higher, then higher, and then probably the highest. We do not know.
Thank you so much, Acharya Prashant. My last question.
Sure.
You know, your life is a message. What you do is a message. This book is a message. What is your message to a world that is seeking hope, that is seeking answers, that is seeking salvation, if I may use that term, after reading your book? What is your message? What is the impact? What is the impact that you're looking to make after someone reads the book? Clearly, it has made me think, made me ask questions. And I said, this is the second book on karma I read in less than 30 days. And there are, so I want to, there are lots of questions, and possibly maybe in 30 to 45 days, I'd request you and your team for another time and we discussed each of the chapter in more detail. I'm sure your book would have been widely read. But what is the impact you're looking to make through what you do and through this book?
There is just one thing I have to say to everybody, one common and universally applicable thing, it would be, well, whatever you want and the good that you want to happen to yourself is indeed possible, but not in the way you are attempting to materialize it. All that is wonderful is surely possible to happen, but not being what you are. Being what you are, you will not get what you deserve. And if you want to get what you deserve, then you will have to stop being what you mistakenly are right now.
Beautiful. I think I'm first of all, I'm grateful to for your input, for your time, for your complete wholesome presence. Really, I read a book many years back called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And it is about being in the moment, enjoying the present. Even yoga is that, feel the breath, be in the present, be in the moment. And if you give it your best, possibly the right output would come out. So thank you. My gratitude. I enjoyed it. And thank you for allowing Kavi to ask your question. Grateful to your team. Your team is great. They are very good for you, and they try to be meticulous. So I'm sure you will express your gratitude to them. So thank you so much. For those who missed the session, you can watch it on the YouTube channel of BW Business World or the YouTube channel of BW Wellbeing, and you'll read an abridged version of the conversation on BW Wellbeing World and read an excerpt in the next issue of BW Business World. So thank you, Acharya Prashant, for making time for writing this book. And really, the right karma is salvation, if I may say. I hope through your book and through your leadership, you're able to guide your disciples, the people who are in your circle of influence, to do the right karma. Grateful to you for your time and look forward to more interaction.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.